think we're in.
Okie dokie.
So are you nearsighted or farsighted?
I don't know. I can't see. Who are you? What is this? Is this the view?
Is this the view? Well, it's a view for sure.
Hey, before we get started, congratulations, man. I'm happy for you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's so exciting.
It's incredibly exciting. I feel like Benjamin Button. Like, I feel like I'm getting younger every day and new joys in life that are rich and just incredible. God is good. I will tell you this. God is good, and I am just so grateful and thankful. It's just awesome.
Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We got back from Vegas Saturday night, and I'm still recovering.
I don't know if I'm man enough to go down there anymore.
Oh, you are the man. Hey, thanks for joining Between Two Humidors, Jason Atkinson. You know, listen, we're not going to do like a total formal introduction. There's enough written about you on the interwebs to fill volume. So, of course, I'll put an introduction on the episode, but thought we'd just dive right into a conversation.
Sounds good, except I'm not joining you between two humidors. I'm still I'm getting my workday going, but maybe this evening.
Perfect. Well, I do have a nice my father steak this morning with my Americano. That's a good way to start the morning.
Oh, well, maybe if I do a good job for you, some of those will appear in the mail.
Probably. So, all right, we kind of need to go back. And I was thinking the other day, I'm like, okay, when did I meet Jason? And my memory says it was about 1996-ish. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. I think it would be actually 94, 5.
Oh, wait a minute. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It is 94.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told people, I said, yeah, this guy, he hired me as a ski instructor because he needed his token large, bald man who could teach little kids.
Yeah, it was new. It was my second year at Mount Bachelor. I had finished my undergraduate school, college, and I had gained a bunch of the certifications in technical skiing and in teaching, and which led to coaching. And I was one of the youngest in the Northwest to get those certifications. And I had a chance to become the director of a ski school in Alaska. And instead chose to come and train under a guy by the name of Jerry Warren, who was at Mount Bachelor for, I think, only 2 years.
But I remember the name.
Yeah, Jerry was he was the teacher's teacher and the coach's coach. And so in the world of alpine skiing, it would have been like the John Wooden of alpine skiing. And so the second year, I was offered to be the ski school director of the left half of the mountain, the Sunrise. I didn't ski over there when I was first year I worked there. I had all high end clients, and I had a good practice happening.
You're saying high end clients don't go to Sunrise? Is that what you're saying?
Not particularly. Not the ones
it's
I was
good taking. Coffee, isn't it? It's good coffee.
So anyway, I said, yeah, sure. So here I am. I'm the youngest one of my staff. I think I had a staff of 40. And if you remember that year, revenues were down. Our ski school was up. We actually were one of the only things on the mountain that year that was profitable. And this little mentor program that I came up with, I think in total it spawned 3 marriages, one of which I know is still together. So, there's some success out of my leadership.
You're 1 out of 3? Okay.
but it was fun. It was a fun time of my life. And then I went from there to graduate school.
It was a very fun time of life, and it was absolutely fantastic. We had a lot of great memories, made some great friendships. Peter Reckendorf, again, he's a man's man.
Yeah, I just talked to him about a month ago.
That's fantastic. But, you did coin a nickname for me, which at the time I really didn't like. I really didn't embrace it.
Well,
in fact, I really didn't like it, but I've grown fond of it now.
I think that's the reason why the name Bunny Man stuck so well to you, is that you didn't like it. And I don't remember why we had this little bunny mask. In hindsight, it was creepy.
Right.
It was very creepy, to have this huge man with this bunny mask, and you have already these natural dimples, and it didn't. The whole thing was funny, but we would call the very first time toddlery kids that were going to stand on skis bunnies, which was against my every training, but I had to go with culture.
Right.
And that's how it started. Yeah. And you were the newbie. You were the noob. You were the bunny man.
I was the bunny man. And I'll just share a quick 30-second story. Then we're going to jump into more here. But one of my very first pieces of kind of job corporate feedback was from our good friend, Chris Smith. And I believe it was him. And I remember before the day started, we got the pen set up. We're getting ready. We got the flags. We got everything good to go. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Ruggles, I need a favor." And I'm like, "Okay, what's that?" He goes, "You're doing bunnies today. And so when you go into the pen and you start to go find your group, I need you to get on your knees and shuffle up." And I'm like, Are you being serious? Like, for real? And he said, "Yes, actually, I am." He goes, "You're scaring the kids." The 6'3" and outfitted and all the pants and the boots. And he's like, "Yeah, just go up on your knees." And I'm like, "Well, son of a bitch. Okay." So,
well,
yeah. So anyway,
those were I quickly got myself out of that, and but I miss the ski business a lot sometimes.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a really good time. All right, so and then at that time you were going to Willamette, is that right? Graduate school.
Well, at the time I was racing bicycles.
Okay.
And so I was skiing in the summer and racing bikes in the winter, or vice versa. And I came off of the mountain and went on a training ride and got ran over by a car, which happens. And I was laying on the pavement going, I'd already raced in Europe. I had already raced at a couple of key things I wanted to do in my career. I said, that was a good time to go to graduate school. Okay. So I went to Willamette. I got an MBA and an MPA. And
I did not know you got the dual. You got the public administration. Okay.
And then I came back and I was already used to being poor. So I moved back to Southern Oregon, and within a year decided, why not? I'd run for the legislature. And so I ran for the House of Representatives. I was 26. The guy that was retiring had been in office for 20 years. And he just patted me on the head as a kid, And the lobbyist gave my opponent, there was a hand-picked guy that the lobbyist and the Chamber of Commerce and the newspaper and everybody else wanted.
And what district was this specifically?
Well, it's all changed now. It was 51 in Southern Oregon.
Okay.
And they picked another guy, and I hustled, and I won that first race by a lot. I mean, literally, I knocked on doors 8 hours a day for months, and I won that race by under 200 votes. And became the youngest, through that. And then 2 years after that, I ran for the Senate. The Senate president, the big guy, was retiring.
Okay.
I'm like, all right.
And what year was this? What year is this you ran for Senate?
This is 2000, 99, 2000.
Okay.
And same thing. There was another guy, handpicked guy. The lobbyist gave him money. He was individually had enough resources, and I was the poor guy that knew how to work. And I beat him, and I stayed in the legislature for a long time. I was in there for 3 Senate terms, 3 4-year terms, and then 2 in the House.
Okay. And then let's see here. And then we reconnected again when you were running for governor.
Yeah, that was about 04. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you had come to Bend, and I think at that time I had my business Access Knowledge, which was the BlackBerry kind of data company that I was helping people with. We got your campaign set up. I mean, at the time, this was like groundbreaking technology, right? I mean,
yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then I think you were making a swing through Bend. We're like, hey, let's hold a little function. And let's see, we had it at the Mountain Room in Deschutes Brewery.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a good night.
Yeah, it was a great night.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I wish I would have won.
Well, so let me test this with you, because I think test my knowledge here. You went on Lars Larson, and he was, what's the right word? He was quite critical, I think, of your stance on, oh God, what was the issue? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Sure.
And that did not help at all. In fact, I thought he was quite rude, to be honest.
It happens.
It happens, but he was sharp, like in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
What was the issue?
Oh, it doesn't really matter. There's a big difference between journalists and entertainers, and I wasn't helping his ratings, and so he proceeded to do bad things. Is what happens to you in politics. One of the things you learn in politics is that there's no loyalty in politics, none at all, and so you have to learn that the hard way. That was one of those hard lessons. And I've experienced the same from people and groups that I have 100% voting rights in our voting records with. Absolutely, their best guy will turn on you. So, I don't have any hard feelings. I don't, I'm not going to give.
This is the nature of the business.
I'm not going to give those people any credit, but it's just the nature of the business. And so,
yeah,
sometimes, in fact, most of the times you have to stand by yourself. And if that goes against the crowd or goes against the angry crowd, well, then sometimes the crowd wins. So I couldn't, I think a lot of groups, especially on the right, as demonstrated by that individual and several others, they want you to be 100% with them on this, or your whole life is bad. And I just wasn't willing to sell my soul. I think public service is honorable and noble.
Yeah.
And it's not, if you tune on Fox News today and you find out that the world's falling apart, none of that's true.
I agree.
Just a few moments ago, I was on another broadcast with a state senator, actually, and a colleague of mine in North Carolina, who are organizing all of a lot of relief effort in their hometown in northern North Carolina that's all been destroyed.
Right.
They're not going because somebody's 100% with Trump, or they're not going because somebody's with Harris. They're helping people. It's what Americans do.
Right.
So here we are in a tragedy, and America is doing the right thing. But does that translate here in Oregon politics? No. I think Oregon politics is in a really bad place right now, honestly. But that's a whole nother topic. But anyway, that's the nature of the beast, Ruckles.
Yes, it is the nature of the beast. All right. So 14 years in public service. Thank you for that. I as a lifelong Oregonian, appreciate that. And I appreciate your stance and not selling your soul, being able to sleep at night. You've always been a bridge builder, coalition builder, a guy who wants to collaborate and lead and solve problems. So for that, I'm thankful. After 14 years, like, what was it? You're like, okay, it's time for the next chapter. Like,
I didn't want to leave public service. I wanted to take a break from it. I had run for governor.
Yep.
I had been through a lot of personal difficulty, which is only accentuated when you're in politics and you're still poor.
Right.
Politics doesn't pay anything. It pays great if you sell out. It pays wonderfully, but I wouldn't.
But the actual salary from the state,
basically no salary.
It's a stipend or something like that.
But there's a lot of members over the years who have been hired by a company to represent in the legislature, and I just couldn't stomach the thought of that. That happens all the time. I wouldn't do that. So anyway, and it was the Tea Party thing, the anger, the absolute vitriol, and really, I don't want to say division as much as it was really stupid. I mean, just the lack of intelligence, the lack of respect for Oregon's history, the institution of public service. Look, I love partisan games. I'm exceptionally good at them. But at the end of the day, I'm friends with these people.
Right.
And I don't care which governor I'm working with, I might need them a week later. And they might need me a week later. I mean, there's the art of politics, and then there's this new anger, evil. If you're not 100% with us, you're a rhino. You're bad. I needed
to your point. That could be from a single issue that you're not 100% aligned on. Yeah.
And I thought I would take a break from that. So I did. I went back to consulting full time, and I took on this little project called the Klamath River, and that consumed a huge chunk of my life to get it completed, which it is now, today, 2024. And we're into restoration. The whole paradigm has shifted. It's the largest conservation victory in history. And then my goal after that was to return to public service.
All right, so let's pause on that for just a second. Well, let's pause on the Klamath Basin for just a second. Say more about that, and then I want to be able to direct people on where they can actually see what you did.
The Klamath River is the longest standing water bore in the United States.
Okay.
It is very unique. It's a very long river. It starts in Eastern Oregon. It flows through one small to medium-sized town in Oregon called Klamath Falls. And then it goes into a place that America has forgotten. So most people think when they think Klamath, they think of Klamath Falls, but that's just a fraction of the story. It goes there. It's been dammed up multiple times. It was first dammed in 1915, and then it was dammed again. And then it was dammed after the 64 flood. And each time it was dammed in a place that was very easy to have a road. And so the road then could deliver the power. Well, as time has gone on, over 100 years later, the power that the old dams had created really isn't up to modern standards. And it's contributing.
Okay.
No, and it has all this massive ecological problems, especially for the health of the river. This river has 5 Native American tribes on it, and inside those 5 tribes are very complicated politics. Very, very differences in who's recognized as a tribe, federal recognition, federal dollars. You have the first instance of bloodshed from the Endangered Species Act at the mouth of the river with the Yurok tribe, the feds trying to close down salmon fishing. And then just a little bit over 2 decades later, the ESA is shut down agriculture in the Klamath Basin from getting water. And so you have this same violence and suicides and bankruptcies and anger and all this incredible place. And yet America has no idea where it is, why it's important. Portland thinks it's a Southern Oregon thing. Sacramento and Los Angeles has no idea it's in their own state. And you have this very long storied history of taking from people who live here and never giving back. And so that goes back to World War I and World War II. And it goes back to different governing philosophies, the philosophy of man can control nature. A lot of those paradigms have shifted from the times of Teddy Roosevelt to where we're at today. Over the course of my life, I've been involved in it. My family, my son is the 5th generation on the Klamath River. So we go back, we're almost 100 years on the river. And I grew up with a lot of the Native American leaders. Not that meant anything other than this is how you know protocol. This is, you knew
culture. You had insight.
I didn't know I was being trained in diplomacy when I was a kid, but I was. And tribal culture is very different than American deal-making culture. In American deal-making political culture, there's no loyalty. It's very transactional. And in Native culture, loyalty means everything.
It's everything.
And consensus, and there's a different set of time constraints. Well, all the power that turns on the lights in Southern and Eastern Oregon, a lot of Idaho, most of Western Washington State, is through a company called Pacificor. Pacificor fires all of these lights and stoves and microwaves and Tesla cars getting reduced on coal power, not on hydro.
Interesting.
The biggest fallacy. It's got nothing to do with especially these little dams, but the other dams around the West. It's all coal fire. And in the course of my life, those dams and that little power company has changed hands multiple times. It was with Scottish Power, then Berkshire Hathaway owned it.
Okay.
Berkshire Hathaway, the person who ran Pacificor for a while, was a friend of mine. And I was friends with several of the Native American chiefs or elders. Sometimes you call them chairmen, depends on culture, but the highest ranking. But I always, there's one now retired friend of mine who I will not call by his first name out of respect. I call him the chairman, Chairman Don Gentry, the finest men God ever made.
Just outstanding. Okay.
Anyway, I was in the position of knowing all these people, and I was also in position now of helping elect George W. Bush. And Bush saw what happened when the feds shut off the water for agriculture. That was on his watch. And so he vowed never again. And
I remember that.
There was all these things that came up. And I was supposed to fish him on the Klamath.
Which means what? When you say fish him, what does that mean? Do a guided tour?
No touring, fishing. I take him out and catch him a fish. Yeah.
Copy.
I guide him. Yeah. And no touring. Who wants to tour? Anyway.
Forgive my terminology.
So anyway, but then 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And so I started working. There was a friend of mine, very close friend of mine. His name's Jim Root. Jim had long time been mostly behind the scenes, occasionally in front of the scenes in some of the largest conservation things in the country. The cleanup after Katrina down in New Orleans, some other large scale stuff. And he had, going very quickly, done some incredible water banking work on the Oregon side of the Klamath. He and I got together and saw all of these hydraulics of failure. You had the far right thought the whole world was a conspiracy, everything's coming to get them, and you had the tribes that were going to sue anything that agriculture did. You had a power company that has an asset that they're going to have to raise rates to make it somewhat profitable, even though they'd rather get rid of it. And we came up with effectively a three-way trade. Power company would give away the dams in exchange for liability protection, so nobody'd sue them.
Sure.
We knew that the far left would hate this, but that's cool. Agriculture would get a guaranteed floor of water, not a ceiling, but a floor of water, and they would have their power rates capped so they could plan. Their power rates keep just going up and up and up and up. We were going to cap them. In exchange for that, they would go along with dam removal. And the tribes would get dam removal, get a free-flowing Klamath back, which is good for fish and habitat. Probably get some federal bucks thrown in for habitat restoration, and at the same time would not sue upstream irrigators anymore. So that's effectively the three-way trade. Now, people on the far right thought it was a great conspiracy and the world's coming to an end. And, Atkinson.
What year was this?
Oh, you'll see it in the movie. And the other side.
No, here's why I ask.
This isn't a year.
No, that's fair, but here's why I ask.
It's about 15 years.
Fair. You say far left and far right, but just the other day, like the environmentalists seem to be on the right side now, but didn't the environmentalists used to be on the left side?
Oh yeah, and today the environmental groups are taking a victory lap on the Klamath, and honestly, when we did all the work, we had to make sure that they weren't involved because they'd messed it up.
Okay.
The environmental groups are very good at raising money, are very bad at building consensus.
Okay.
And so the old adage is, if you can accomplish anything if you give all the credit away. So today we're giving all the credit away to people that weren't in the room, which is cool.
Fine.
We pulled it off.
Yeah.
But the hydraulic was the left didn't want agriculture in the basin at all. We still don't.
Interesting.
And so it's a weird push and pull. But anyway, we when the dust all settled, agriculture actually walked away. I say this in big terms, but they walked away from the deal. So they don't have a guaranteed floor of water, and they don't have their power rates capped. They decide to go on some pretty scary right politics that didn't help them. Many of the people involved passed away over a series of things that happen in life, tragically. And in the end, we were right at this point where we weren't going to get anything. And so what I did, a guy made this movie called Supersize Me, where he ate supersized fast food and almost died.
Yep.
His cholesterol almost exploded. And it wasn't that good of a movie, I didn't think. But it was really clever because when the movie was released, 2 weeks later, McDonald's dropped their supersized menu. And before the movie was released, there was all these lobbyists in Washington, D.C. fighting. So there's big ag that's fighting against the do-gooders, and the do-gooders are like, your kids are going to have cholesterol from too much chicken nuggets, and you can't have kids eat this stuff. And then the sugar lobby, and it was just this big, and they weren't ever going to win. So a guy makes a movie, and McDonald's drops supersized fast food.
Right.
I'm like, brilliant.
Right. Right.
So we made a film called A River Between Us. It took 5 years to do it. I raised about $1 million to pull it off. And we shot the story of the film of the river. And we didn't shoot it from an environmental perspective or a political perspective. We shot it from a human perspective.
There we go.
The audience is smart. If you're hardcore Trump, thinking the world's going to come to an end, you will not be offended by the movie. And if you're hardcore left and don't like agriculture, you're going to be fine. So we made this film, and it turned out great. And we made it for one person. We made it for Barack Obama. And the rest of the film was to legitimize this issue in New York, Colorado, South Carolina, all these other states that have no idea that the largest conservation victory in history is some little tick on a news story that flares up under the political arm, some political story, some far away place.
Sure.
So we humanized the story, and short version there's a lot of drama, but we won. Awesome. And my involvement started with George W. And we finished with the last year of Obama.
So
everything he signed is what's happening right now.
Yeah. And it's not finished, but how many years in that focused effort?
Well, the last dam came down 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so go back. How many years?
Of my life? 30.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, 30. Yeah.
Where could people find it? I know it's on Amazon Video. Is it anywhere else?
It's on Amazon. It's on iTunes. We came off of Netflix. I think there's still a website, A River Between Us. Yeah. So
okay.
It did real well.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That's a significant collaboration and a significant effort.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, another little video that you did that was fascinating to me, and I think once I finished watching it, I think I sent you a text that said I was a horrible friend. But it's on YouTube called Man Out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit eye-opening.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I've already recommended it to anybody who I can talk to. Seriously. Yeah, no, it's incredible. Not only just the cinematography, which is absolutely gorgeous. You had some great drone footage. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, that film, that was a COVID film. We made that for the Fly Fishing Film Tour, right the year that COVID came out. But it was 600 miles out on the Aleutian Islands chasing fish.
It was really gorgeous.
Yeah, really pretty.
But the message behind it was fascinating as well.
Yeah, so it's one of my attempts I've done. I'm really interested in the arc of a human being, usually men, who are struggling, and so the concept of man out was, who is the man that's out, and why do they choose to be out? And so that can be out of community, that can be outside, that can be out of sorts, that can be out of your family. I did a pilot for the Discovery Channel on the same thing,
which I would check all those boxes myself in my own life. So it certainly resonated with me. But please go ahead.
Well, you're smoking a cigar in the morning, so things are good. But yeah, that's been an interesting theme that I keep exploring. But film is a fun medium to play with. It's just expensive to do correctly.
Absolutely. But I think what was interesting to me of the many things that I learned, but when the gun went off in the bag that you just dropped on the floor, and then the feedback, the criticism, the friends that you had at that time seemed to have a different take on what had happened. And just from the way you described it, it didn't sound like a really fun time.
Yeah, well, it was awful.
Right.
The person that you mentioned at the beginning of the show went on and made fun of me as I'm in ICU, maybe dying, and made fun of me for 3 days on the radio. That was great. But yeah, it was a time where I was supposed to die. I was supposed to bleed to death. Had a very bad injury, and then I was supposed to have my leg amputated, and then it was just to be save your leg, lose your foot, save your leg, save your foot, but you'll never walk again. So it's a long road. I'm still not sure what I learned from all, But the only way through is to go through.
Oh, got a little bit of a technical thing going on. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So why'd you make the movie?
Which one?
Why'd you make the movie?
Which movie? Ruggles? Oh, that was made for an audience. It was for a film festival, and I decided to give it a little bit more than add a little story rather than a bunch of people holding up fish. So I added more weight to a film festival movie, and then it toured. It went around for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to me that it was a bit of a cathartic production.
Well, I don't know about cathartic, but it had a little bit more weight to it than a lot of other films in that genre.
Well, going back to how you described filming the Klamath River, not from a particular political angle, or it was a human angle. So you offered that same human angle with Man Out, it would seem to me.
Yeah, I think to hold an audience's attention, you've got to give something for an audience to connect to emotionally, spiritually. I think I never want to preach at anybody and lecture, but I also want to gently provoke ideas that have an audience member look at a point of view differently. Maybe they're not looking at it completely, and so maybe what I believe about this issue or these people or why somebody behaves this way, maybe the audience can think they're unable to see the complete picture. Maybe there's more to the story. And so on all those, I enjoy that challenge of storytelling. There's a lot of people that will preach and yell and lecture and talk down. And on all the things I've made for audiences, I've always tried to be either looking directly on the same level or place myself below and look up to the audience. I always want the audience to feel respected in whatever I make or whenever I give a speech or talk. I always want I never want the idea that I'm talking down to somebody. I'm telling you the way it is. I always want to be level or below the audience. And I think that act of humility opens people who perhaps don't care about rivers up to a film like I make, or don't care that much about, men on adventure. It opens them up to wider. I do this other nonprofit thing, which I'm sure you want to talk about, but a lot of the response I get is from the spouses of people who go with me.
Yeah. So before we get to that,
they're deadly curious about what did I do to their spouse. I didn't do anything. I respected them. I looked them in the eye, and I looked with respect. That's what I did.
Okay, so perfect. So let's pause there for a sec. Where did you learn that, and who did you learn that from?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, was it your dad? Was it your mom? Was it your uncle? Was it just the culture in which you were?
My dad has been on the radio almost every morning of my life. I think he's closing in now on 35,000 interviews. So when you grow up around somebody who's doing radio and television and doing interviews, you learn a lot. So watching him certainly, but then there's also style differences. I think there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom.
I agree.
Knowledge you can learn. Wisdom you have to gain. And I think hopefully in my life, I'm moving more towards the side that would err on the side of the audience. It would err on respecting somebody who's giving me their time to listen to something I have to say. And I think that the dance between creating something or giving a speech or communicating with somebody who's willingly giving you that, I think if you start with respect and you start with a degree of love and honor for whoever that audience is,
Mm-hmm.
I think you can be a lot more successful. And so I wouldn't say I've learned it as much as I've certainly done it wrong before.
Sure.
And I don't want to do it wrong again. And when you do it right, there's a lot more fruit from it.
But it would also sound like you had it modeled to you firsthand from your father and in the interviews, not only just in terms of how he interviewed people, but how he ran a business, how he ran the household with your mom. I mean, that it's not just one thing. It's a combination of things.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think certainly I'd give all that credit to my dad. I think there's other things that you just kind of pick up, along the way. But I'm interested in the dynamic of what it means to respect somebody, and starting from respect. I think respect is such a undervalued commodity in culture, that when you actually do it correctly and you do it out of a place of respect and out of love for somebody, it's shocking. It's so unused today. It's shocking to the person receiving it. And I guess I like that element of shock. I think that's a good thing.
And when you say shock, I also would like to build on that and say it's refreshing. You jump into a cold river. Yeah, there's some shock, but it's also refreshing. Have you been to the Cigar Chapel here in Bend?
I don't know if I have or not.
Well, you're going to. So
Thank
put
you.
that on your agenda. The reason why I mention it is because, the guys, and I would say 90% of the people in here are guys. And, you light up a cigar and you're always having great conversation. Anyway, we've got a gentleman here who's good friends with Theo Vaughn, and he actually met him in rehab down in Los Angeles. And so it's kind of interesting. Theo Vaughn just came to Bend a couple weeks ago and did a show, and apparently it's really, really great. But the reason why I mentioned him is apparently he just interviewed Mark Cuban a couple days ago. And, he is pretty active with the Harris campaign. He's an advisor, and he's pretty outspoken on X for being very pro-Harris and not in the camp of Trump in any way, shape, or form. But my point to this is Theo's done a great job of talking to the human being as opposed to a partisan. And that's what I'm hearing from you is when you start from the human angle, we all have similar stories. We have similar challenges, raising a family, having a career. And if you can start from a center point of humanness and demonstrate that respect, have the open mind, ask questions, you're probably going to get a lot farther in terms of either A, learning something new, or B, having a conversation where the persuasion and the influence can actually have an effect, as opposed to talking down or being super sharp or what have you. And honestly, that's why I started this, is because I want to learn, and I like to hear different perspectives and to weave in your thought around knowledge versus wisdom. Google's full of knowledge, but wisdom, you kind of earn that.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about there's an interest really specifically around men and their lives. And so let's jump to the other thing that you're doing. Again, your schedule is quite busy. So, thanks for spending time today. I don't say that to puff you up. I sincerely thank you for that. But talk about Pastor Mondays. I think that's talk about creating an environment where men, specifically pastors, can just, I don't want to say relax. It's not about relaxing, I don't think. It's really about, can they just be who they are and not have to carry any kind of expectation for them in their daily lives? They can just go fish, have a good time. I'm going to stop talking. Can you talk about Pastor Mondays?
So Pastor Monday is a nonprofit that we started now, well, nearly 5 years ago, but in 2020. It's Oregon-based 501c3. What we do every Monday, 52 Mondays a year, we give away fully guided professional fly fishing trips to pastors, only pastors, no deacons, no elders, no nice guys, no friends, no, just pastors.
Okay.
And we have grown because the demand is so big. We have grown. We have a chapter in Oregon, North Carolina, North Texas, Colorado, Alaska. And next year we'll see. We're in discussions about adding additional chapters. Each chapter is small. We have to have online signups because we're not doing a big, I'll explain why we keep it small. But it's pastors, plural, pastorsmonday.com. Why a pastor? Well, pastors, very simply, whether you agree or not, whether you go to church or not, it really doesn't matter really what your audience thinks. They have their own preconceived ideas of a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
That's not why we're not doing it so that people outside of pastors are impressed with us. We're doing it because we believe the pastors, for good or bad, but pastors are the most important community leader in every community. A pastor never, ever receives a phone call of good news. Not a single time. A pastor is constantly 7 days a week treated, usually based in sarcasm. It's a terrible job. And yet, if you believe in Scripture, Scripture says, I'm going to give you these shepherds. And as you know, Ruggles, some are good at it and some are not very good at it. And we as Americans, we shop like we're shopping at the grocery store for churches. Yeah. But we switch around a lot. But the pastor of the little church of 40 people out in the middle of nowhere is just as valuable when it's the pastor of a church of 4,000 people. And so when things strike, like we see in North Carolina, it's not the government, it's the churches. When a kid needs to go to a camp, or when there's somebody is hooked on drugs, when there's a single mom trying to hold it together, and there's older people who their only outlet is the church, it is not the government. It's these little churches. It's churches all over. And so these are people who I believe are called to do this work. And what we do is we build them up. And we very strategically do not have an agenda. We simply serve them. 95% of the pastors who come with us have never touched a fly rod. They don't know anything about fishing. But the good thing, why do we do fly fishing? Well, fly fishing is aspirational. It's beautiful. It's outside. It's in nature. It's not golf. And, we remind people that Jesus called fishermen. He didn't call golfers. So there's really no barrier to entry. So people that would come with us, they love the fact that everything that we do, whether they appreciate it or not, but everything that I do, it's the highest caliber. You're not going to find a guide anywhere that does it better than us or to a higher degree of detail than us. Boats are clean, men are in uniforms, food is perfect, everything. Now, they may not appreciate what we're doing, but we know what we're doing. And so we serve these people and we teach them how to cast and we catch them a fish. And all of a sudden, they're waiting for the first 20 minutes. They're with us. They're waiting for the ask. These guys are going to ask me for something. These guys are going to somehow disrespect me. Somehow this is going to be a joke. They're signing me up for a Bible Sunday. I've got to be a professional Christian here. I know it. They're waiting for that. It's built in.
There's a comma. It's coming.
Comma. And after about an hour, they realize there's no comma. We're just doing exactly what I said we're doing. Our agenda is to curate, not to orchestrate. We can't orchestrate. We're good. We're not that good. What happens on the water, and I believe it's divine, is we curate these experiences, and I could not ever tell you why or how, other than I believe God himself will put two pastors who need to sit next to each other together. Different ages, different denominations, different everything. And they make a connection on the river. And then I find out months later that they're working on a homeless issue together or helping people recover from forest fires, or the list goes on and on and on and on. And that spirit of service that we do has translated now into all these other states. It's still in startup mode. I'm still having to raise money for it. But in fact, I raised money for it. There's expenses to doing all this at the level that we do it.
Mm-hmm.
However, it continues to be a huge impact. And here in Southern Oregon, I've pulled pastors from as far south as San Diego, as far north as Vancouver, BC, and as far east as Kenya. How does this work? I don't know. I got emails 2 days ago from Pittsburgh, and last week I did a thing for some guys in Oklahoma. The loneliness of these leaders, the feeling that only thing that they get is disrespect. The pastors walk the language, the whole thing, the whole pressure they're under. And again, there's lots to criticize. You can criticize any church because it's made of human beings and all have sinned and all are flawed. Yes. However, these are really fascinating leaders that we take care of. And the demand for them the demand for what we're doing has outstripped our supply.
So have you had a pastor after that hour and a half, look at you and say, so, like, they're waiting for the comma, like they're ready for that ask. The expectation is there and it's not happening. Do you see their whole disposition, kind of their whole body language, like,
oh yeah, every week,
just go down 5 notches?
Yeah. No, it's terrific. No, we get notes and letters all the time. Obviously what we do out there is confidential, but we get notes that without this, they would have quit. Right now, the dropout rate of pastors is 42%. 44% thinking about dropping out. The number goes up the younger the pastor is. I had no idea that there was such a high suicide rate.
Where do these stats come from? Where do you get
Barna Research in Arizona. This is the premier evangelical research body. George Barna Research, but I had no idea that there was a pastoral suicide rate. I had no idea addiction issues, any issues that a man would face are found with these leaders also. But unlike other people, they have no one to talk to. They have no one to talk to. So if their kid gets screwed up in drugs, who do they talk to? They can't talk to anybody at church because now they might lose their job or any other host of that type of thinking. So,
yeah.
And so we have created this community where it's based in respect. It's absolutely confidential, and there's safety, and these real relationships are made all across this wonderful excuse of being on a river that is a tremendous benefit.
So knowing that there's a high degree, the highest degree of safety and privacy, can you share a story of one that has had a profound effect on you that just keeps you going? That, like,
in broad strokes, when we got started, there was a huge forest fire, and there was a pastor of more of a blue collar church,
mm-hmm.
and several families in his church lost everything in one night, lost their homes. And seated next to him was a pastor, very much his junior, different denomination, different education, of a white collar church, smaller, but a white collar church. And by the time they got off my boat, there had been some movements for people to get houses again. And I'm like, I think we're in a lane here.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many notes I've got from spouses saying he was about to quit. Now he's staying in. Or, some friendship was made on the river that has turned into, a real friendship. And it's always interesting because it's almost exclusively across denominational lines.
Really?
Yeah, almost every time that at least I find out about it. And that stuff happens every week. And sometimes I find out about it. Sometimes I don't. I don't need to.
Right.
I don't need to. But we just serve, and it works. And the demand is I need more money. I need more guys. It's too big.
And primarily these are all men. You don't have any women pastors?
No, we just have to be a little bit, we have to, I don't want to say change our game, but we have to be, I got to make sure that, yeah, of course we'll take female pastors. Yeah, of course.
Sure.
But we just have to be a little bit conscious of optics to protect them and to protect us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's great. It's terrific.
And yeah, you can't write this. I mean, the connections that are made, the positive connections and consequence and reverberation. I'm not saying the word right. Reverberations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
Are profound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. So next year you might branch out even more.
Yeah, right now it's just I just have to raise more money. We have interest in a handful of states. It's supposed to be local. It's not a week-long trip, so no one's got to come up with $2,500 or $5,000 to go somewhere for a week.
It's one day.
It's one day, every Monday. We go every Monday. So you go on. You said on Monday the 15th, I'm coming. Do you have room for two? Look on the thing, and if so, let's think about it. If I had a big group of 20 or 50 or 100, would that pastor feel very special? No. And they wouldn't even catch anything. Only the first guy in the boat.
Yeah.
So we do, in Texas, In Texas, they meet at a certain coffee house and they go out in a sprinter van to private water and fish all day with a hosted lunch and a guide. North Carolina, they meet at a certain place, jump in a Suburban, and go fish all this incredible water that now it's been flooded. In Colorado, they meet in Denver and they go any plethora of places. In Oregon, we jump in drift boats. But we're just creating these moments and creating breathing spaces, but we're treating the pastor as the most important leader in every community. So behind me, Ruggles, see, there's a picture of me and the president. That's George W. And this is a note from the president thanking me for a fly rod I gave him. I've been in the fly fishing world a long time.
Sure.
And when we started Pastor Monday, I looked at that picture and I felt terrible. I felt absolutely terrible because the president of the United States has the finest everything. He has the finest, whatever it is, he has the finest. And if I really thought that the pastor was the most important leader in every community, why would that person have junk? Why would I take some yard sale stuff and old holy waiters and a broken rod that needs to be fixed and give it to the most important leader? I would, if I were taking the president out, I wouldn't take him out with junk. I'd take him out with the finest. And so we flipped that around. And so when a pastor comes with us, they go with the finest in everything. Stuff that they're in Bend, I guarantee no guide does what we do every Monday. Because it's respect, and we show love by showing our respect, whether they know it or not. When they're with us, they have the finest guides, the finest experience, the finest food. Everything's the best because we know why we're doing it, and that's important to us, and it shows.
Yeah, I was going to say it's working and it's growing.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I'm going to do a shameless plug because I can. So how do people find you and potentially help with
pastorsmonday.com? That gets to everything. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So when you think about 14 years in public service, the largest, help me with the words here with the Klamath Basin. What is the largest what?
Oh, conservation victory.
Thank you. The largest conservation victory. And now you're doing Pastors Monday. So when you're writing your book, I mean, when's your, I know you're still young. You got a long way to go, but what have you learned so far? I mean, what are you passing down to your son? What are you sharing with your friends? What wisdom?
Well, Ruggles, I've written 4 books, and the last one was for my son. It was called To Be a Man. And it was a list of, it was actually a bunch of phrases I collected for 18 years that I assembled into a book. Right now, I'm actually doing a lot of work, which I'm enjoying with the Aspen Institute. I have been trained to be one of their moderators. And so I'm starting next week.
And that's why you missed my wedding, right? Because you were doing some
stuff
there.
Yeah. Apologize. That was on the book. But I'm doing a lot of work with them and which I enjoy and always have enjoyed. But the thought there is you're really reading the classics and trying to mine the classics for modern wisdom. But I guess what have I learned? I'm still learning. I would say that when it all boils, you boil it all down, there's really no life hacks. There's really no 3 steps to anything.
Mm-hmm.
All that is just nice millennial fluff. And I love social media. At least my dogs are famous on social media.
Yeah, they are.
But I would say, Ruggles, that the only thing that really if you boil it all down, and where do you get to wisdom? You get to wisdom by learning that love is the only thing it's the only real commodity that we have. And I think that you can't fully embrace that until you've wrestled with the one central question in the world. And there's one central question. There's only one. And everybody has got an answer for it, and everybody has to make their own answer. And that answer, that question simply is who do you say that Jesus is? And if your answer is he was a good guy and he was a nice philosopher and gave a nice way of life, okay, that's an answer. If you say you believe he is who he says he is, that opens your door to a much bigger world, and it opens your door to a lot more risk, and it opens the door to potentially experiencing love. And if you get to that, I think that's where I believe that's where wisdom is. But it's a hard road to get there.
Boy, I could say that 5 times fast. That is true. All right, so let's do a little bit of a pivot. So we had the VP debate last night. I did not watch it. I saw some clips.
That's
how do you? What's that?
That's quite a pivot. All right,
it's a pivot. So where are we at? How do you assess where we're at in terms of our election and just what's happening in? It's so broad. Sorry, it's just so broad. But politics, culture, just the left, the right, looking through your lens of humanity, what you've done in your career and working with tribal leaders, working with politicians, working with pastors. How do you view what's going on right now? And when people are going, at least again, here in the chapel, excuse my French, but like things are just so fucking upside down. How do you stay optimistic? What's your thoughts?
Well, today we as Americans, we don't consume things we don't agree with. We consume the news we most agree with. And most of the news that is consumed isn't news. It's not journalism. It's entertainment. And so there's a significant humanless echo chamber that we're all consuming. So if you're a Fox News person, anybody that's not a Fox News person is evil. And if you watch MSNBC, Fox News people are evil. Come on. None of that's true.
No, I don't subscribe to that.
Because it's entertainment. It's not really the news. But if you look at, I think we're at an interesting point in our country. As a student of history, one of the things, without going back into antiquity time, but one of the things in our American culture that united our founding fathers, the only thing, there was a huge debate between the role of the colonies, between each other. And should we have our own currency, or should each colony have what became a state? Should each state have its own currency? Should we have a federal militia? Should we have a navy? Should we have a centralized government, or should it just be decentralized for a post office? These are the things that we were really trying to figure out. There was a lot of division, but we were united as a country around one idea. And that one idea was we don't want a king. Yes. Whatever we do, we don't want
monarchy.
We want no monarchy. We don't want a state-sponsored church. We don't want anyone telling us what to do. So the founding of our country has this beautiful blend of puritanical Christian devotion, Greek concepts of the good life, and Roman concepts of law. That's all wrapped around we don't want a king. So when I look at Donald Trump and the people who follow him, I just go, wow, there's really history there. There's really history that people don't fully appreciate. because they treat him like a king, like an unfallible king. And as a person, and I got to choose my words carefully, because
Sure.
that movement has even hijacked the language. But as a conservative, conservatives believe in a limited role of government, but that America has a place in the world. We believe in free markets, but not necessarily at the expense of our own people. There's a balance. And so here comes Trump. We're going to put tariffs instead of free markets. We're going to side with communism over democracy. We're going to absolutely make fun of people, destroy the level of civility, and everything's a victim. And by the way, we're going to tear down democracy, and it's not my fault. At a certain point, I think this is a birth pain for the country, and I hope that when this chapter's over, I hope there's a resurgence back to not going backwards, but there's a realignment back to our core principle, which is individual freedom. I don't think you can worship a king and have individual freedom. You just can't. It's never worked since the time of the Assyrians in 4,500 BC.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time a king was really set up and tried, and it didn't work then. So why we're trying it now is just crazy. I think that the thing that the media has done is actually put it all on somebody's one shoulders. Like the president can do all this. It's not true. The House of Representatives has the checkbook. They have the nation's checkbook. And that body, Congress, is the most ineffective, failed group of humans we have as leaders today. The Senate is not much better, but the House is a disaster. So Republicans have control of the House. They can pass nothing. They cannot pass in. And when the Democrats had control, they couldn't pass it.
I was just going to say, right.
It's just, it's a train wreck. Now let's step back as a small C conservative. A government that doesn't work well should stay out of my hair. So it's not, it's not all bad if government is grinding, as long as they're not messing things up for the taking freedoms away. But we have the idea that it's all on the president. Well,
it's just not.
It's just not. And right now, I would say you got to remember, Americans, we have this love-hate thing about elected leaders, and we have this love-hate thing about government. But there is no society in the world that has more government than the United States. Everybody, you, John Ruggles, you have a city councilor, you have a mayor, you have 3 county commissioners, you have a state representative, you have a state senator, you have a congressman, you have 2 senators, you have more commissioners that are commissioning over you than you're even aware that you have, and you have a governor and a president. There are so many layers of you being represented as Jonathan Ruggles you're even unaware of. There's no other country in the world that has that much representation. So we don't necessarily need more government. We do need it to work, but worshiping a king, that has not worked in history.
No, we have plenty of books and history on that. So let's just build on this a little bit, and I want to bring one specific event, one specific clip that is making rounds, and it does give me pause, and I'm curious in your opinion. And I'm not going to demonize anybody when I say this name. I say this name, and it's going to invoke who knows what people think. But just I want to get to the point of what was said. And from what I've been able to watch and listen, apparently John Kerry's on record for saying that our First Amendment is getting in the way of trying to govern this country. Now, I'm paraphrasing. Are you familiar with what he said?
I'm not.
Okay. I would suggest anybody listening to this to go find it. It's not hard. But he was at a trying to remember what the event, what the conference was. But he's on record basically saying that the First Amendment is getting in the way of properly governing. And when I first heard it, and I subsequently listened to it a couple more times, it really kind of chilled me, because our First Amendment is such an American thing. And if that gets, it's really being tested right now. To have a comment like that really struck me as not great, like not great at all. What are you talking about? Our First Amendment is so significant to our country, our way of life, all of that. I'm just curious in your thoughts on the First Amendment, and where we're at as a society. Now, you can throw in social media, you can throw in media, you can throw in other things, but what's your thought on that?
Well, I apologize. I don't know the context, so I won't respond to
Sure.
a quote I haven't heard. But,
Sure.
The First Amendment is there's a reason why it's first. There's the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the freedom to assemble. These are all critical portions of the foundation, because our government is built around individual freedom, not around a king.
Right.
And so we have the ability to criticize our government, and we have taken it to a very fine art. However, the quintessential intellectual debate is, do you have the right under freedom of speech to stand in a dark theater and yell fire when there's no fire? Does your speech, your freedom of speech, and its ability to create a stampede and hurt people as they rush out of a theater that's not on fire, do you have the ability to? Are you protected from doing speech that is knowingly harmful? It's a hard one. It's a hard debate that we have. Does the KKK have the ability to march in the street? Is that protected? Does somebody have the ability under freedom of speech to burn the flag? Does the freedom of speech only work when it's socially acceptable? Well, it's a tough thing that every generation of Americans has to wrestle with. But I would always err on the side of free speech, but I also would err, hopefully, on the side of speech that builds the country up, not rips the country down. And if you look at it that way, if you look at speech that is controversial at the time, but also ends up improving our country, you can see plenty of examples through history where I think that protected speech is valuable. Letters from a Birmingham jail that Martin Luther King wrote in the complete abandonment that he faced being jailed for his beliefs on freedom. Well, it turns out that if you read the letters from Birmingham jail, the sentences that he's using, the structure, the sentiment isn't anger. He had every right to be angry. Mm-hmm. It was about the larger struggle for civil rights. Juxtapose that to a foolish, offhanded statement by a very foolish politician who's trying to get on social media, saying just stupid things for the sake of getting on news. I think I come from a model that says that people are smart. Mm-hmm. And if you believe people are smart, which I do, I think they see stupidity like some politicians make. They see the shameless pandering of, and I could give you all the names on the right and the left that just pander and say stupid things for the sake of being stupid. Mm-hmm. Say it on Fox News, they'll say it on MSNBC, whatever will get the little ratings, whatever will get the niche.
Mhm.
And I think rest of America doesn't necessarily agree. I think there's a lot of eye rolling with some senators and some members of the House when they say stupid freedom of speech things. I think what we need in this country is wisdom. I think we need statespeople. I think we need people who quit pandering and actually lead. I think the Trump ordeal is just that. I think it's an ordeal. I don't think it has an ounce to do with leadership. I don't think January 6th has made the country better. I don't think his lack of understanding of foreign policies made the world safer. I don't think playing with tariffs is going to help improve anybody's life domestically. The tax cuts that he gets all the credit for actually increased taxes in blue states like Oregon. It didn't reduce our tax burden. It increased our tax burden. I'm hoping that ordeal goes away. I'm hoping that absolutely king worshiping Republicans, I hope that kind of starts to fade down and we get back to people that are actually leading. But that's my opinion of your comment. I think it's a protected speech that we have to accept, even when it makes us uncomfortable. I just hope that our level of discourse goes up, and we actually build the country.
And are you optimistic in that direction?
Yeah, I am. Things have a shelf life. Things have a shelf life. You got to remember. Just look at behind me with this president. So extremely unpopular when he's elected. Then 9/11 happens. Then after the second Iraq war, popularity drops. And then at the end of his last session, all the Republicans abandoned him because he bailed out the auto industry. Okay, that was 8 years. And today, well, maybe he wasn't so bad. Go back to Republicans voting against Harry Truman and give him hell Harry. They wanted to beat Dewey. And Harry Truman becomes president of the United States. It was David McCullough's father, the famous American biographer, who recounted his dad, who was being diehard for Dewey, but about in the mid-50s says, boy, I sure wish we had Truman back. So I think history has a way of softening. But the only thing I worry about in our country.
Yeah, I'd take Bill Clinton back.
The only thing that worries me in our country is what unites us is tragedy. When we don't have tragedy, we kind of live in this fear-based, everybody else's fault type of world. And when we have something bad happen is when we unify. And I would hope we as Americans could learn our lesson and unite and build a country now without a tragedy, without a terrible thing happening to us, without a natural disaster. And the reason I'm so optimistic is because I know that the thing I just told you about the pastors and a Lutheran and a Nazarene hanging out with a Baptist and Assemblies of God. These guys are they all speak the same language. They're all on different teams, and now they're all building a community together. Yeah, it can happen.
It can happen.
Our politicians are kind of weak sauce. They're kind of lightweights.
Why is that?
They have lightweight staffs.
Why is that?
Well, the reason is because that's, for all the faults of people who are elected into office, as bad as they are as human beings, they are a very direct reflection of the people who voted for them. And so if you look at Congress, you've got that's the most blah, 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 blah. You can make fun of it, certainly. But they are a direct reflection of the people who put them in office.
They got there because of our vote.
direct. And so if you think that the MAGA people and the worshiping of Trump and the craziness is bad, well, they were elected to do that. That's the campaign they run.
Vice versa.
And vice versa on the left. So I think America right now does not want leadership. It doesn't want it likes slogans and Instagram and bits of earned media. It doesn't want thoughtful leadership. It's skeptical of reason. It's skeptical of the underpinnings that created our country. But that'll turn too, and it'll come back. And people will want principled leadership, and they will want thoughtful people, and they will want more, thoughtful leaders who have read a book of history and understand a perspective and understand where things are going because they know where things have been. Right now, at least in the party that I most associate with as a rebel now, I don't think any of the Republicans in office have ever read a history book. I just don't think they know anything.
Well, that's a claim.
Yeah, I don't think they know. They just don't. Donald Trump does not know. He does not know Middle Eastern history.
Does Trump know Middle Eastern history?
He has no idea he has no concept. He thinks.
But the other side, do they know? We're focused on him, but how about the other side?
I think more so. I think there's a real. I have a lot of friends in the Biden administration, and they have a very deep love of history and a very deep love of country. But I see the members of Congress that's just all transaction, short based. It's not. There's no touch of history or appreciation of history in the parties, right? And especially in the congressional level. And the legislative levels 10 times worse. I mean, Oregon is a small state. We have less than 4 million people. We were founded in 1859. We, along with Wisconsin at the turn of the last century, are the birthplace of the progressive movement. We are the states that came up with direct election of the United States senators rather than legislatures doing it. And we are part of the movement that created the referendum and the referral of the initiative. Nobody knows that.
I didn't know that.
They didn't know. The legislature, members of the Oregon legislature, have no idea why everything is defaulted to task force and blue ribbon panels. No other state does it that way. There's a reason why we do it, but that's not leadership. And that's what we do. So I think, to answer your question, Ruggles, I think it will come back. I think America at some point will value leadership again, and value character and value integrity, but they're certainly not seeing it in the kind of dingbats that we're living through primaries today. We just, back to Martin Luther King, to paraphrase, he said, send your good into ministry and send your best into public service. And right now in America, we are not sending our best into public service.
Well, that's not very optimistic.
It is. It's just being truthful.
Yeah.
The very best choose not to do that.
Because they get eviscerated. I mean, who would want to go into public service right now?
It doesn't attract the best people. And
although we've got a gentleman here in Central Oregon, Michael Summers. He's running for a Senate seat. And I know the family not well. But I was actually talking to a family member. Out of respect, I won't say who. But Michael's the nicest guy, and I think he is a consensus builder. I think he is a collaborator. I think he is a listener. Does he know the history of our state and to the degree that you've lined it out? I don't know. I will make a claim that he knows or he doesn't know. But in talking to this family member, actually, I brought up you, when I was talking to this family member. And I was referencing that Lars Larson interview that you did. And I shared with this family member, I said, as nice as Michael Summers is, and you might kick me under the virtual table on this, and that's okay. I said he needs to be a little bit sharper. He can't be so nice that he just gets run over or he doesn't get elected, right? Because if you don't get elected, then you can't do anything. And I was just like, not that you need to get nasty. I mean, there's a certain level of getting in the mud. I don't know what that level is. I don't claim to have the answer on that, but I'm just a little bit skeptical and a little bit anxious that there's a little bit of Pollyanna lenses in which this particular candidate is looking through. And I just don't know if there's the mental fortitude, that internal grit to play hard. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I don't know. I'm a little anxious on that.
Well, I always ask candidates, I've run just under 50 races in my racing career, strategy and messaging and all that. And I would always ask candidates the same question the first time I met them, and sit down and they were like, "Oh, good, Jason's going to run a race and now we're going to win and all that, blah, 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 blah. Very nice. Thank you. Nice to meet you. So I got one question for you. Why are you going to run?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Why?
And they give me usually a cheeseoid answer. And I'm like, so if you're talking to the home builders, would you give that answer? Well, no, I'd change it to blah, blah, blah. Oh, if you're talking to the nurses, would you? Well, no, I'd give this. Oh, so you change your answer of why you're running for every audience?
On the constituency, right.
I'm like, all right, I'm not going to work for you. I will not get you elected because you can't win. You're easy to defeat. Oh, but Jason, I'm like, okay, here's the deal. Call me in a week when you know why you're running for office. And so when you find somebody that really knows why they're running, they want to fix something. It's never the things that you find out on the campaign. He's a man of character. All that is just, that's consultant fluff. People want to do something. They want to change the world, or they have an ego, or something bad has happened to them, and out of love, they don't want it to happen to anybody else.
Yeah.
Those are why people run for office. And guys like me train them in how to actually do it and be good at customer service and be good at constituent work and, to do all that. But someone's got to know why they're running for office. And once they know, now you got something to work with. Right. And right now in the United States Congress and a lot of roles in legislatures around the country, you have people that want to be Donald Trump light, and you have people that want to be liberal light. And whatever that even means, it's not really who they are. And so you have a lot of people in office that don't know who they are, who are making decisions based on a very transactional philosophy that's not good for the country. Here's an interesting thing, Russell. So when I was in office, I started this. I taught this college seminar every week, and the first lecture was this. I said, I have a premise. I would tell the students, I have a premise, and the premise is that 10% of the legislature holds the other 90% together. And at the end of this term, on a 3x5 card, you're going to write yes or no. That's the final. Yes, 10% holds it together. No, it doesn't. But if you write yes, I want you to put the names down, who you think are the 10%.
Is that 10%? Okay.
So then the first question, Senator Atkinson, first question of the term. Senator Atkinson, what does hold together mean? I go, welcome to my class.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to get some definitions.
So after all the years that I did that course, and all the people who took that course, I still have the 3x5 cards. almost unanimous yes. It was a very small percentage that held the other larger group of politicians together. And the names on that list were never in the newspaper when we had newspapers. They were never from just one party. It was fascinating. And it was almost split 50-50 Republican, Democrat, people who could actually put, so I'll tell you some of the names of people who your audience wouldn't know, but who are no longer serving, but there's people like Senator Abel Gordley, an absolutely powerhouse of a woman who was a civil rights leader in Oregon forever. Senator Charles Starr, Republican, passionate advocate for literacy. People, the unions fought him forever because he was Republican, even though he was on their side. A man who took tremendous hits with tremendous courage. And you'd ask him, how are you today, Charles? And to this day, he will say, I'm blessed. You would find people who, like we just lost, Senator Peter Courtney, Democrat, very partisan, but always was about the bigger picture, always about the bigger institution. You have that DNA in our state. You have that DNA in Congress. You don't have a mechanism for it to be appreciated. You don't have a mechanism for it to come out, but it's there. And that's one of the most beautiful things about the American system. So as bad as it looks on the outside, go ahead, change the channel. It'll look worse from another perspective. But underneath it all are really good things. And eventually the American culture will come back and demand grown-ups to be in charge again. Right now, we're just not electing them.
Well, that gives me hope.
I'm here to give hope, Ruggles. Things aren't as bad as they seem.
No, I would agree. I would agree. Yeah. I mean, again, I'll reference the chapel. The conversation around here can get very interesting. And I kind of come back to that as well. I've been in Bend for 34 years. And typically when I share with people how long I've been here, they're like, oh, do you still like it? I mean, everybody hates it. I'm like, no, I love Bend. It's magical. It has its issues like any other town, but this place is absolutely magical. It's so great. But again, I think the leaning on negativity is it's too easy for people to lean on negativity. And I just don't subscribe to that.
Go to North Carolina right now. Politics don't matter.
Right.
I talked to a very good friend of mine 2 nights ago. I texted him and because I couldn't get a hold of him, and he texted me back from a bomb shelter in Tel Aviv. Just to his west is Gaza, just to his north is Lebanon, Hezbollah, just to his south, Egypt, who the Houthi from Yemen are throwing bullets at him. Bombs from 3 directions. He's in a bomb shelter. Our country will be okay. And I just hope that our cultural appetite for grown-up leadership and it will outlive the drama of this presidential race. But we get back to principled people doing principled things for the good of everyone, rather than these little transactions to get on a blog or
factions.
Fox News.
Right.
But we'll get there. The world's a tough place right now, and America is, even in our darkest hour, we pull together.
Yeah. Jason, I feel like we could go on for like another 2 hours. Maybe we'll do a part 2 next year or something. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, and this has been very interesting.
Thanks for having me, Ruggles. Congratulations on the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're grinding. It's been a tough summer, but we got some more people coming, so I'm excited about that.
Congratulations on last week too. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you. Yes, life is very good, and to use the phrase that you mentioned with the one Democratic senator, I am blessed. So I am
He's
very
Republican. He's Republican.
Oh, well, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. What a wonderful Charles Starr forever affected my view of life.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will end it here, my friend.
Right.
And continued success to you and continued health.
Thank you. Be well.
All right. Thanks, you too.